Let me ask you something. How many times have you swallowed your frustration just to keep the peace? How many times have you stayed kind, even when someone clearly took advantage of that kindness? Frank did exactly that. A soft-spoken, retired veteran, the kind of neighbor who waves hello every morning, who'd give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. A man who had seen enough hardship in life to know that anger rarely solves anything. A man who believed, above all else, in treating others with respect. Frank had lived in his quiet suburban neighborhood outside of Sacramento for over 30 years. His small home, nothing fancy, but full of memories. The kind of place where he'd spent lazy Sunday afternoons tending his garden, chatting with the mailman, and watching the seasons change from his front porch. But recently, something had started to disturb that peace. There was a woman, a stranger to the neighborhood, who began parking her large white SUV directly in front of Frank's driveway. Not once, not twice, but over and over again, always blocking the way, always acting like she owned the street. At first, Frank thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she didn't realize she was blocking his access. So he did what any decent person would do. He left a kind little note under her windshield wiper. "Excuse me, ma'am," it read. "This is my driveway. Please don't block the entrance. Thank you." Simple, polite, no drama. But the next day, there she was again. Same SUV, same spot, same blatant disregard. Frank gave her the benefit of the doubt. Once more. Another note. This time a bit firmer, but still kind. Days turned into weeks. Each time she parked there, Frank's frustration grew. But he held it in. He believed that if he stayed patient, eventually she'd come around. After all, who wouldn't respect such a reasonable request? But that woman, she never did. In fact, the more Frank asked, the more defiant she became. Once, when he gently approached her to explain how hard it was for him to get to his doctor's appointments because of her parking, she shrugged, smiled that smug little smile and said, "It's a public street. I can park wherever I want." That moment hit Frank hard, because here was a man who had spent his life defending the rights of others, who had given his youth to serve his country, now standing powerless on his own front lawn, unable to even back out of his driveway. But what that woman didn't know, Frank wasn't entirely alone. His son, Michael wasn't just a good son. He was a lawyer, sharp, methodical, and fiercely protective of his father. And when Michael stepped in, he didn't shout. He didn't argue. He didn't let anger lead the way. He let the law do the talking. And that's where the story truly begins. Because this isn't just a story about a parking dispute. It's about the power of standing your ground. Not with rage, but with grace. It's about knowing your rights and defending them with dignity. So stay with me. You won't believe how this ends. Frank wasn't the kind of man who liked to complain. He was from a generation that believed in hard work, in keeping your head down, in not making trouble where there didn't need to be any. He'd served his country, raised his son, paid off his little house on a quiet street in Sacramento. And at 71, all he wanted was a bit of peace. Nothing fancy, just a sunny porch to sit on in the mornings, a small vegetable garden out back where he could plant tomatoes in the spring and watch the birds flit between the feeder and the oak tree he'd planted the year Michael was born. Most days, Frank would wave to the mailman, share a laugh with the neighbor across the street, and make sure Mrs. Alvarez had someone to carry her groceries when her arthritis was acting up. It wasn't much, but it was his life, and it was good. That's what makes this story so hard to tell, because it wasn't about a parking space. Not really, it was about something deeper, something that cuts a man right where it hurts most. You see, when that woman parked her big white SUV across Frank's driveway for the first time, he gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she didn't see the driveway. Maybe it was just an honest mistake. So he wrote her a note. Neat handwriting, kind words. "Please don't block this driveway. This is my home. Thank you." But the next day, the SUV was back. Right there again, like his note meant nothing at all. Frank didn't want to make a scene. He never liked confrontation. So he wrote another note, this time a little firmer, but still polite. Days passed, then weeks. Every time he looked out his window, there it was, that same white SUV. sitting there bold as brass, cutting him off from the world beyond his own home. And here's the thing about being blocked in. It's not just about the inconvenience. It's not just about the hassle of not being able to get your car out. It's about control. It's about dignity. Imagine for a moment what that feels like. You're 71. Your knees aren't what they used to be. Getting out to the store or to a doctor's appointment takes effort. You've earned the right, after a lifetime of doing things the right way, to come and go freely from your own home. But there's a stranger out there who's decided that your needs don't matter, that your space isn't really yours, that your time isn't worth respecting. And when Frank finally worked up the courage to speak to her face to face, to look her in the eye and explain calmly how much trouble she was causing him, she didn't apologize. She didn't show an ounce of shame. She smiled, shrugged, tilted her head and said, "It's a public street. I can park wherever I want." Just like that. Dismissive, careless, cruel in the way that only arrogance can be cruel. Frank stood there on his own front lawn, words caught in his throat. Because what do you even say to that? How do you make someone like that understand? And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not the parking, not the blocked driveway, but the feeling that he was invisible, that his years, his service, his kindness, none of it counted for anything to her. It's a hard thing to feel like you're being pushed aside, like the world has moved on and left you standing there alone, watching as respect for others slowly disappears. But Frank wasn't as alone as he seemed, because Frank had a son, Michael. Michael, who'd grown up in that little house, who'd learned from his father what it means to be decent. Michael, who had watched his dad wave to every neighbor, lend a hand without being asked, choose patience over pride. And Michael had chosen a different kind of fight, not with fists, not with shouting, but with knowledge, with the quiet strength of a man who knows exactly where the lines are drawn and how to defend them. When Frank told his son what had been happening, about the SUV, about the notes, about the smirk on that woman's face, Michael didn't lose his cool. He just nodded, listened carefully, and then he did what Frank had always taught him to do. He stood up, not with anger, but with grace. Michael had always known his father was a patient man, the kind of man who believed, maybe too much, that if you stayed kind, the world would be kind back. Frank wasn't one for fights, not in the streets, not in words. He fought for his country when he was young, but after the war, all he ever wanted was peace. He built a life on that principle, raised his son on it, treat people right, give them the benefit of the doubt, don't make trouble where there doesn't need to be any. But as Frank sat on the edge of his front porch that Sunday afternoon, telling Michael about the woman with the white SUV, something inside Michael broke a little. Not because of the parking, but because of the way his father's voice sounded. There was a weight in it, a kind of quiet humiliation, the sound of a good man wondering if the world still saw him, or if he'd simply become invisible, and Michael couldn't stand it. He listened carefully as his father explained how the woman kept blocking the driveway, how the polite notes were ignored, how the gentle requests were met with that same cold smirk. "It's a public street," she had said. "I can park wherever I want." Words that cut deeper than any curse. Because it wasn't about the law. Not really. It was about respect. It was about dignity. Michael knew that better than anyone. So he looked his father in the eye and said calmly but firmly, "Dad, we're going to fix this." Not with anger, but the right way. Michael didn't rush into action. He knew the law didn't care how upset you were. It only cared about what you could prove. So the first thing he did was simple. He showed up. Every morning for 2 weeks, he visited Frank's house with a camera in hand. Quiet, steady, watching. Photograph after photograph of the SUV parked squarely across the driveway. Videos showing Frank standing there, keys in hand, unable to pull out of his own garage. Timestamps, dates, documentation, evidence that spoke louder than words. Michael talked to the neighbors, not to gossip, but to ask respectfully if they had noticed the same thing. Mrs. Alvarez, sweet and frail, nodded sadly. "I've seen it almost every morning," she said. "I thought it wasn't my place to say anything." Mr. Jenkins across the street added his voice too. She's been doing it for weeks. Your dad didn't deserve that. One by one, people came forward, quiet witnesses to a quiet injustice. And Michael, patient, methodical, built his case. He pulled up the California Vehicle Code, Section 22,651. Right there in black and white, illegal to block a private driveway. Grounds for citation, fines, even towing. But Michael wasn't just looking to tow her car away. That would have been too easy. What he wanted, what his father deserved, was an acknowledgement, a recognition that Frank still mattered, that his home was still his space, that his years of kindness hadn't gone unseen. So Michael drafted a letter, not with rage, not with insults, but with the clarity and precision of someone who knew exactly where the line was and how far it had been crossed. It was addressed directly to the woman. Her name, tied to the vehicle registration, sat plainly at the top of the page. This letter serves as formal notice regarding the unlawful obstruction of the driveway located at Frank's address. Repeated violations have been documented through photo and video evidence, corroborated by multiple witnesses. Under California law, this constitutes a clear violation of property rights. Michael didn't threaten. He simply stated the facts. He included the dates, the times, the statements from neighbors. He quoted the law, and he outlined what would happen next if the behavior continued. Immediate towing of the vehicle at the owner's expense. Formal reports filed with the local police department. Potential legal action seeking damages for interference with property use. Then, carefully, deliberately, Michael sent the letter via certified mail. Return receipt requested. There would be no "I didn't know." No room for excuses. Frank watched all of this unfold with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "I didn't want to cause trouble," he told his son softly one evening. I just wanted her to respect my space." Michael placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "Dad, you taught me to be kind, but you also taught me that standing up for yourself isn't the same as starting a fight. You deserve better than to be pushed aside." And Frank, for the first time in weeks, felt something shift inside him. Not anger, not pride, but the quiet relief of knowing that he was not alone. Days passed. The SUV vanished, gone as suddenly as it had appeared. Then one morning, tucked neatly into Frank's mailbox, was a small folded note. "I apologize for the inconvenience I may have caused. I was unaware of the hardship this created for you. It won't happen again." No signature, but Frank didn't need one. The words were enough, because this wasn't just about a parking space. It was about being seen, being heard. It was about reminding the world that even the quietest voices still matter. It was one of those perfect spring mornings, the kind where the air feels soft against your skin, the sunlight catches the leaves just right, and the birds sing like they know the world is finally listening. Frank was sitting on his porch as he did most mornings, a steaming cup of black coffee resting on the small table beside him. He rocked gently in his old wooden chair, the same one he'd sanded down and repainted last summer. The breeze stirred the flag above his door. It was peaceful. It was quiet. That's when he heard it, the low hum of an engine approaching, slow, careful. Frank looked up, and there it was, the white SUV, the same one that had sat across his driveway for all those weeks, the same one that had caused so much frustration, so much quiet hurt. His stomach tightened. The car rolled to a stop, but this time, it didn't block the driveway. It pulled up neatly along the curb, leaving the entrance wide open. Frank sat still, watching. The door opened and out stepped the woman. She wasn't wearing sunglasses this time. She wasn't looking down at her phone or avoiding eye contact. Instead, she walked slowly, deliberately, hands folded nervously in front of her. Frank stayed seated, unsure what to expect. But then, softly, almost hesitant, she spoke. "Mr. Frank?" He nodded, eyes steady. I was hoping we could talk." She took a step closer, stopping at the edge of the walkway. She didn't cross onto the porch. She stayed just far enough to show respect. "First," she began, her voice a little shaky, "I owe you an apology, a real one, not just words on paper." Frank said nothing. He waited. The woman took a breath, gathering herself. "I was wrong, completely wrong, and I was rude. More than rude, I was disrespectful. And I'm sorry. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time, Frank noticed how young she really was. Maybe in her late 40s, not much older than Michael. I didn't know your story, she continued. I didn't know who you were. I didn't care to ask. And that was my biggest mistake. She paused, looking down at the ground, then back up at him. But after I got that letter from your son, I started thinking about what kind of person I've become. And honestly, I didn't like the answer. There was a long silence between them, the kind of quiet where two people are trying to find the right words and not rush past what matters. I grew up here too, you know, she finally said. Different side of town. My father served in Vietnam, lost most of his hearing because of it. I watched him struggle when people treated him like he didn't matter. And yet, I turned around and did the same thing to you. She swallowed hard, voice cracking. That's not the person I want to be. Frank leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. He listened. I've been thinking, she went on, voice a little steadier now. What if, instead of just apologizing, I actually tried to make this right? I know I can't undo the way I treated you, Mr. Frank, but maybe there's something good that could come out of all this. Frank raised an eyebrow, curious now. There are so many veterans around here, she said softly. Men like you, people who gave so much, but who don't always get the support they deserve. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small notepad, flipping it open. I've been asking around. There are local businesses that would donate supplies, churches that would help, even a few neighbors who said they'd volunteer their time. She took a breath. I want to start something. A neighborhood group, a network of support for veterans in our community, help with groceries, rides to appointments, simple things that could make life a little easier for men like you. Frank didn't speak right away. He felt his throat tighten in a way he hadn't expected. For weeks, he'd been carrying the weight of feeling small, unseen, dismissed. And now here was this woman standing before him, not just asking for forgiveness, but offering something more, a chance to build something better. Just then, Michael stepped out onto the porch, holding 2 cups of coffee, stopping when he saw the woman. His eyes narrowed for a moment, protective, unsure. But Frank held up a hand, giving his son a small nod. It's okay, son. She came here to make things right. Michael watched his father's face, the calm, the openness, and softened. The woman smiled, faint but genuine. If you're willing, she added, I'd like your help, Mr. Frank. Your advice. Maybe even your leadership. You know better than anyone what these men need. Frank sat back slowly in his chair, exhaled, and nodded. You know, he said quietly, for the first time in a long while, I think I'd like that. Sometimes the smallest moments in life hold the biggest lessons. A blocked driveway, a white SUV parked where it shouldn't be. At first glance, it seems like such a simple thing, almost too small to be worth telling. But as you've seen, this wasn't really a story about parking. This was a story about respect, about kindness, about what happens when we choose not to look the other way. Because here's the truth. There's a Frank in every neighborhood. Maybe he's your neighbor. Maybe he's your father. Maybe he's you, a good man, a woman, someone who spent their life working hard, raising a family, doing the right thing, not asking for much in return. Just a little peace, a little dignity. But the world moves fast these days, and too often people like Frank get overlooked, forgotten. It's easy to assume that if someone stays quiet, they're okay with being treated poorly. But silence isn't the same as acceptance. Sometimes silence is just the last bit of patience a person has left. Frank didn't ask for a fight. He asked for respect. And thanks to his son, Michael, he got it. Not through anger, not through shouting, but through steady, calm action, through knowing the law, and standing up for what's right without losing grace. But what makes this story even more powerful is how it ended. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with understanding, with a chance to turn something ugly into something meaningful. Because that woman, the one who blocked his driveway again and again, she could have stayed defensive. She could have doubled down on her arrogance. But instead, she listened. She chose humility. She chose to admit she was wrong, and more importantly, she chose to make it right. And in doing so, she reminded all of us of something we so often forget. It's never too late to be the better person. It's never too late to say, I'm sorry. It's never too late to change your course. And it's never too late to turn a mistake into a chance to serve others. Frank didn't just get his driveway back. He gained something far more valuable, the chance to help others like him, to use his own experience, his frustration, his quiet hurt, as the starting point for a community effort that could bring real help to veterans who've given so much. That's the kind of ending we need more of in this world. Because let's face it, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. Sometimes we forget to slow down and see the people right in front of us, the ones who've paved the roads we now walk on, the ones who made sacrifices so we could live freely. But the real question is, what do we do next? Do we keep ignoring? Do we let pride keep us from reaching out? Or do we stop? Listen, apologize, connect. So here's my challenge to you as you sit there watching this story. Who is the Frank in your life? Is there someone you've overlooked? Someone whose quiet dignity deserves your respect? Or maybe, is there a conversation you've been avoiding? An apology you've been meaning to give? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been in a situation like this, on either side of the story? Have you ever been the one who felt invisible? Or the one who realized too late that you hadn't been fair? Please share your experience in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Let's learn from each other. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, take a moment to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to hear more real-life stories like this. Stories that remind us of what truly matters. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing: to be seen, to be heard, to know that our lives, our stories, our struggles, they matter. Thanks for watching, and thank you for listening. Not just with your ears, but with your heart.